Dr. Tyler Panzner is a PhD scientist that left conventional medicine to transform lives in a very different way by combining genetic testing and advanced supplement science. His deep understanding of pharmacology and genetics really goes above and beyond what you're going to hear typically from any doctor or scientist. And so we had such an incredible conversation. I found it so fascinating. I was truly nerding out on our conversation and could have talked for hours about the things we touched on. We really could have a few more episodes going into detail about some of the things, but really, I think you're going to find it so fascinating. And especially if you are one of those people who's really struggled with the typical approach before, whether it be the conventional approach, whether it even be a functional medicine or integrative approach, you've still maybe struggled to get the results that you've been looking for. I think this is the conversation for you because it really goes into how our genetics can really change the way that we can tolerate supplements, how supplements will interact in our body, and some of the things that we really need to think about for all of us when it comes to medications, supplementation. So please enjoy this episode as much as I did. And I'd love to hear your insights afterwards as well. Please leave comments, leave me a review. I'd love to hear what you think about this episode. All right, Tyler, thank you so much for being with me here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to dig in and share some knowledge.
Yeah, I'm so excited as well. So I want to learn first about you a little bit on the personal side. How did you get into this sort of unique field, this unique position that you're in now?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting story. I always loved animals. I wanted to be the next Steve Irwin. So I wanted to be the
Mhm.
next crocodile hunter. I loved messing around with reptiles and bugs when I was a kid. I wanted to be a wildlife biologist. But in high school, once we learned about cells, more on that micro level, remember, like, you see all the different organelles, right? The mitochondria, the ribosomes. And I just remember seeing a video of a cell, all the stuff buzzing around inside. And I was like, this is incredible. There's 30 trillion of those things that make me. It was just so incredibly fascinating. So that's what got me interested in the more micro side of things. When I went to college, I never really wanted to be a medical doctor. I, ironically enough, didn't want to work with people directly, even though I do that now on my own terms, right? But I didn't want sick people yelling at me to get their medications or this or that. So I ended up doing my major in not pre-med, but cellular molecular biology, which turns out was exactly perfect for me. So I did all the organic chemistry, bio 1 and 2, but then got into more of the granular molecular biology. I just love knowing why or how. You tell me something happens, how does it happen? Literally to the most molecular things. How does sunlight raise my vitamin D?
Mhm.
Why or how do I get so anxious when I get nasty email from a coworker? Like, what's literally happening in my body to change that?
Mhm.
So I got really interested I've always been interested in supplements, making my own pre-workout powders and stuff, selling little baggies of white powder in undergrad and stuff, right? Like all legal stuff, right? But just how you
Mhm.
can alter how you feel, how you perceive reality based on what you put in your body. I could rev myself up, I could calm myself down, and you're almost playing like God in a certain way with how you're perceiving your
Mhm.
life. Because there's no real truth. It's just how we're all perceiving it. That's the bane of human communication, two different perspectives on things. So I found out what I really loved was pharmacology when a professor said, hey, you don't want to do pharmacy. I didn't want people yelling at me about drugs and look into pharmacology. And I looked into that and I was like, wow, this is the exact thing I've been obsessing with for the past 3, 4 years. So
Mhm.
let me decide to go to grad school. So I went for a PhD in pharmacology right out of undergrad. Really loved neuropharmacology. So again, how we can change our mood and behavior. I did research in neurodegeneration labs, mood disorder labs, but I ended up doing my thesis work on breast cancer metastasis. Was around halfway through the PhD, I got my 23andMe done and realized a lot of mutations I had that explained my chronic brain fog, histamine issues, anxiety issues, sleep issues, and was able to really help myself for issues that doctors wanted to put me on medications for, just with a handful of 2 or 3 targeted supplements
Mhm.
that did more for me than 15 random supplements based on the labels on Vitamin Shop. So that was the aha moment for me, the beginning of my genetics career, functional genomics, and did that with friends and family, not as a business, just on the side, and decided I want to go all in on this. I think this personalization is the future. We could touch on this more. I think whether it's allopathic or functional or naturopathic medicine, a lot of it is still, the issue is it's the protocol based on the ailment or the label, which
Mhm.
without a doubt helps a lot of people, but a lot of other people, they fall through the cracks because there's infinite flavors of any ailment. So I worked for a clinical genetics company that did cancer screenings for cancer cells to figure out what drugs we need for cancer. And I'm
Mhm.
like, why don't we just figure out what our healthy cells need so they don't become cancerous, right? So we're happier and healthier. It was actually my 30th birthday. I got laid off due to all of the restructuring of the company, this and that. Went all in on my mission, seeing people. It's been 2.5 years or so since then. Worked with over 700 people, all different types of issues. I like to say I'm a cellular health expert. So it's not so focused on one specialty, but it is under that umbrella of the genetics always, and then really being precise with the supplementation due to my background in pharmacology. So that kind of leads us to where we're at now.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I resonate with that because I was going to be a dolphin trainer. So that was
Oh,
my
cool.
childhood passion.
Yeah.
And then same biology, but then I stuck with medicine because I don't mind people yelling at me, apparently. That's how much they do sometimes, but it's also very rewarding. Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, that segues so perfectly into what you do and your approach to things. And with that said, how can we approach our genetics and maybe make some more targeted changes in our health?
Yeah. I'll never be that genetic shill saying genetics are all that matters. There's enough
Mhm.
social media people out there like my way or the highway. But what I've seen is the vast majority of people I work with, they're doing the right things. They're eating organic. They move their bodies, right? They're trying to limit stress. They eat I don't know, did I say they eat organic? Yeah, I think I did. They eat organic. They're doing all these things and they're still not feeling good. Why? So I primarily work with people one-on-one to really take that genetic information and build a cohesive plan. Have you seen a lot of genetic testing panels or reports?
I have.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
pretty chaotic, right? Like it's a
Maybe,
lot.
very.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of information and there's a lot of contradictions on these
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
And me with my pharmacology background, I learned, even though I was trained on the conventional side, how to making new chemotherapy drugs, immunotherapy medications, it's still the same cells on how things affect them. So coming over to the more holistic side, it really gives me a unique edge. And the main issue I see is people only think of what's on the label.
Mhm.
They don't understand other things these supplements do. So I see people feeling worse. I think it's really underreported how much people don't feel good on supplements. Nowadays, people are taking so many different supplements. And I always thought it was ironic that doctors need to go to school for what, a decade to prescribe medications. And any of you naturopaths or functional medicine people listening now, don't shoot the messenger. I know there's some level of training, right? But based on what I've seen, the people I've worked with, either those naturopaths or functional medicine practitioners didn't really pay attention in class, or they're not going deep enough. Any
Mhm.
supplement you think of does many things in the body. You may think you're helping your inflammation, but you're also pulling iron out of your body, or you're also affecting your hormones because these supplements do multiple different things.
Mhm.
So, really reading between the lines and figuring out it's not just this is helping my anxiety. How is it helping? Which pathway is it working on? And whatever
Mhm.
pathway it's working on, how is it affecting it? Are you making more of this neurotransmitter, breaking down this one slower? These are all knobs and levers we can be pulling to change how we feel. But there's just a lot of supplement related harm or injury just because it's really the Wild West out there with all the discount codes and all the people pushing all their powders, this or that. It's very overwhelming with all that contradictory health information.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think too, it's oversimplified, like what you said, what's on the label, but not even the quality of that ingredient, or
Mm-hmm.
if it's they're working in your body, or what do you actually have going on in your body? Knowing what the actual problem is usually or often overlooked. And you're right, I am a traditionally trained doctor who turned functional medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I got some supplement training, but a lot of it was on my own also because it isn't, I think, the systemic issue with medicine right now is that we're not getting some of this, especially allopathic doctors, but
Hmm.
all of us aren't getting enough probably of really how to customize it in actual training. We're learning more through experience, which would be nicer to not have
Yeah.
to just guess on things sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded, right? And,
Mhm.
I tell people you can't blame the doctors. It's the system. Everyone's so busy trying to do what they need to do. And I like to say, I like this triangle of you have how medications interact with your genetics. That's called
Mhm.
pharmacogenomics, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of testing out there. Then there's how supplements interact with your genetics, which there's much less interest, even though it's ironic. I'm not sure why. It's just as important.
There's money in it. That's
So
why.
yeah, that too. And then there's also supplements interacting with medications,
Mhm.
right? So we put on the labels of medications don't have with grapefruit juice. If you have like
Mhm.
mood or psychiatric medication, why is that on there? Grapefruit juice has molecules in it that block the enzymes that break down drugs. So like in your liver, imagine like a little Pac-Man, right? That chews up all the drugs. That's why the drugs wear off, right? You need to take more of them because you metabolize them. But having grapefruit juice will slow down the metabolism. There are a lot of different supplements out there, a lot of herbs out there that also affect these enzymes. And now here's what's interesting. It's people may say, where's the data that this has an effect in humans?
Mhm.
Well, these herbs and things, they may not be always incredibly potent on their own, but how many people just take one supplement? What if you're taking three or four herbs that all affect the metabolism? Maybe each of them are somewhat minorly. And then before you know it, part of the reason why you feel all loopy and out of it is because that SSRI you're on is actually doing 50% more activity because you break it down slower.
Mhm. Yeah. Such a good point. And with that, I guess maybe a little bit like deterred off for a second of genetics in general, because it is, you mentioned the panel. If someone just goes and gets 23andMe done, or even if they're working with a doctor to get a panel, it's this massive panel that may or may
Mm-hmm.
not have some personalized information on it. But is there a wrong approach to it as well? Are there examples that you see where it's, oh my gosh, they either missed the mark completely or it's overdone?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big problem with the genetic space. And that's why a lot of people, a lot of my clients come to me. They have 3, 4, 5 different companies' tests, and they're like, all this stuff because let me put it this way, a lot more people know genetics than understand supplement pharmacology. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
a lot these companies, how many people know what the MTHFR gene is and what it means, that mutations? A lot of
Mhm.
people know that, but people don't understand the nutrients, the supplements you're recommending. You may be helping methylation, but again, you're messing something else up. So that's the biggest missing piece that I see. And it makes sense why I see that because I'm a pharmacologist by training, right?
Mhm.
So I think a lot of these reports nowadays it's kind of like a pissing contest. Who could talk about the most reports or the most genes? Like our report is 20 pages. Ours is 40 pages. And you get a bunch of videos and you get 300 recommendations. And I really don't think that's the answer. Just more reports,
Mhm.
more overwhelming feeling when a regular person tries to read and understand that. So then at the same point, they're not educating about these interactions as much as
Mhm.
well. You may need more of that supplement, but again, it's clashing with something else. An
Mhm.
example I like to give, you've heard of the curcumin supplement before?
Mhm. Of course.
Yeah, that's the active
Mhm.
curcuminoid in turmeric root. Without a doubt, very good at resolving inflammation. But what else does it do? If you read the label, it'll say brain health, gut health, joint health, inflammation. Okay, how's it doing it molecularly? Does lower inflammation, which is good. It also blocks the genes that break down neurotransmitters. So that's why it can help with mood. It raises serotonin, it raises dopamine. But what else does it raise? It'll also raise adrenaline. So if you're
Mhm.
someone that's prone to anxiety, it can make you more anxious or not sleep as well or more irritable. It
Mhm.
also pulls iron out of the body. So if you're anemic or normal-ish, low normal iron levels, you can go anemic and have all these issues. I've seen people's hair fall out because of all the curcumin they're being told to take from their naturopath. It's also a copper chelator.
Mhm.
Do that for copper. It also blocks something called the 5-alpha reductase enzyme. So this is the enzyme that turns testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, also called DHT. So again, if you are someone that's lower DHT or normal, you might bring it down too low. So that's just one supplement. I listed what, 4 or 5 different things. So
Yeah.
if you're someone that is at prone to anemia, you have lower DHT, you're prone to anxiety, you're prone to having lower copper levels, those are 4 risk factors you should be cross-referencing before you put someone on. Nowadays, they're all the mumbo jumbo, extra strength curcumin, right? It's never just a regular
Mhm.
dose anymore. It's
Yeah.
more is better. You're
Yeah.
not just going to get more anti-inflammatory effects. You're going to get more of all these other effects. So you better make sure you're not at risk for any of those. But if
Yeah.
you're someone that has high DHT, high iron, right, high inflammation, it
Yeah.
can be perfect
And a
for
good
you.
health
So it's
thing.
not good or bad. It just depends on the person that it's in.
Yeah. That's such a great point. And are all of those, since we're on the topic of that, are all of those dose dependent, or any of them just like no matter
Yeah,
what?
all these different effects will be dose
Yeah.
dependent. And we got to think about too, the dosage of the curcumin, right? But
Mhm.
nowadays we chemically modify a lot of these things. So
Mhm.
curcugreen, that's a patented form that's
Mhm.
chemically modified. I forgot the percentage. It's probably in the thousands of percent more bioavailable, right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
have Longvita curcumin, which is one that's marketed to get to the brain a lot better.
Mhm.
I remember I tried taking that. I used to take regular curcumin and I felt pretty good on that. I tried the Longvita, more to the brain, even better. Oh my God, I was a panicked mess. I couldn't
Mhm.
even sleep that night. It was horrible because I got a lot more to my brain. I'm prone to that higher adrenaline. I already break that down more slowly. So I was tweaking out for a while there, and I used to think I was the one in a million. No
Mhm.
one's as sensitive as me. But now that I worked with hundreds of people, I realize you remove some of these things and overnight people's anxiety gets better, or within a week they get more energy because they're no longer anemic by removing these supplements.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things. It's how do you properly educate of all these nuanced things? It goes deep, but I think a good starting point is, I guess, trying to educate the practitioners. I'm trying to do what I can to educate the consumers as well, but even these manufacturers don't know all these things about the supplements.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, the interactions and all the nuance. Yeah.
Yeah. Because think about it too. It's not just the curcumin dosage, it's the type. But what if you're taking quercetin is also an iron chelator? It
Mm.
also raises adrenaline. So what if you're taking curcumin for your inflammation, quercetin for your histamine? You see
Mhm.
how this can easily just stack up. And think
Mhm.
about this. Where are the studies that say it's safe to take multiple of these together, right? People may say, oh, there's no data that curcumin supplements can lower iron. What if you're taking 3 other supplements that also lower iron, right? When you think about it, we don't even study the safety of these supplements in the context in which people consume them and utilize them.
And those show up as two curcumin and quercetin are in a lot of supplements
Well,
together.
yeah, I said that for a
Like,
reason. They
yeah,
are
like for
everywhere.
inflammation, for
Yep.
allergies. Yeah. All of the
Yep.
above. Yeah.
Yep. And
No.
again, it's not that I haven't heard success stories with them, but most people come to me not feeling good, so I get biased more of the doomsday bad
Yes.
reactions to these things.
Yeah. And I think one of the takeaways that I'm getting from this conversation too so far is that it isn't that you have to be afraid of every single thing, but maybe being more mindful about what you're taking. And like you said, more is not better. Don't take
Yep.
just a laundry list of supplements. That's something that I always caution people against, even though a lot of other functional medicine doctors, yeah, they're putting people on a regimen of 50 supplements.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I completely disagree with that. So
And then also too, each supplement product has 10 ingredients, right? So they're on really 500 things technically. And I'm a big fan of, I do like multivitamins, not the Kirkland brand quality multivitamins that are have the right, we could touch on methylation stuff too, the right methylation nutrients if you need it, the level you need, not just chug and overload with all these methylfolate and methyl B12. But then I really utilize by far and large, that's how you say it, right? The individual isolated nutrients because I want to be targeted. And if I think something's causing issues, remove one variable. You don't want to remove one product and now you're pulling out 8 supplements at once because it's a blend.
Yeah.
How do you know what's doing what there?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how a lot of these big things that are supplements that are used by a lot of functional medicine, a lot of them are these big mega blends.
Yeah. Which can be more convenient. So there's
Well,
value
they
with
definitely
both,
can.
but I
Yeah.
agree, especially for my sensitive patients. I'm like, let's do one thing at a time as well. Yeah.
Now, what percentage of your patients would you say you consider sensitive?
Oh, that's a great question. Not a huge number. Again, I'm also somewhat cautious about, and I guess cautious isn't the right word, conservative with the supplements I'm recommending. I try to keep it realistic, but I would say a good 5 to 10% of my patients are, and it isn't just for supplements or medications, hormone replacement, they tend to be sensitive with a lot of different things. I think the word sensitive because it seems like you have a negative connotation to it, but they're in tune with their body. They
Yeah.
feel the difference of things very easily.
Yep.
Which is good and bad, of course.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that stems to the genetic mutations, as I alluded to, like the ones that I have, and they're fairly common, they're not super rare on how we metabolize neurotransmitters. So if you think about it, if you introduce a vitamin that helps you make neurotransmitters or a hormone, right, that also helps that,
Mhm.
it's all going to be magnified. Because if I start making more serotonin or more adrenaline and I can't break it down as quickly, I'm going to feel that easier, right?
Mhm.
And these are, ironically enough, also these same mutations. They can make you more prone to overthinking, right? So they're also the deep thinkers, like thinking, oh, what's going on, this, that, whatever, where then the supplement may make you this anxious, but then your own mind's reaction to that little feeling of stress or overstimulation, now you're off the deep end because your mind can be your own worst enemy.
That's a good point. Which genes are those that maybe
Yeah.
someone should be like aware of if they feel like they're that kind of person?
Yeah. So the COMT gene
Mhm.
and the MAO gene, those are the 2 genes that break down these neurotransmitters. Now, the MAO gene that breaks down serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, and adrenaline. The COMT does all of those except serotonin. So I can see with people a slow MAO gene can be linked to aggression, temper. They've done studies on violent offenders in prison. A lot more prevalence of these mutations. Now, it doesn't mean if you have it, you're a violent person, right? A lot of other
Mhm.
stuff's involved, but it can be linked to anxiety, but I'm trying to kind of word this. It's also raising your serotonin along with it. So you can be short fuse. That
Mhm.
slow COMT gene, that elevates dopamine, noradrenaline, and adrenaline without serotonin. So that's where I see more of the impending doom anxiety, right? Like the rumination. Yeah, like the impending doom, like you've done something wrong, and very like negative, skittish type anxiety versus just being more short fused, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Mhm.
So those 2 genes I see play a big role in people's personality types. And when I meet people, so there's 2 major mutations in that COMT gene. I have both of them, and this means mine works 4 times slower. So I'm more excitable, more type A. I'm always exploring, impulsive at times, but prone to stress. And I could tell when I interact with people with pretty good accuracy on these discovery calls with people, I think you have what I have. You could just tell some of those people with the they're very good conversationalists, like very like outgoing, kind of excitable personalities versus someone that may be a faster, kind of a little more quiet, reserved. So instead of the hyperactive, more of maybe the ADD type mannerisms.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's one of those genes it's not just neutral or high, it's high or low,
Yeah.
right? With how it's
Yeah.
functioning.
And then
Yeah.
a lot of other stuff comes into play too, like how well do you detect the dopamine, right? How it's not just how high the levels are, how well do you make it, how well you detect it. So it can be a really big rabbit hole. And that's why, again, trying to tie all these things together can be hard at times. And that's why I hand make my reports still. I'm trying to figure out a way to start automating that, right? But it is going to lose a little bit of the magic, right? Because it's not me really weaving that together for you, but I love doing what I do and changing people's lives, but to have that real impact that I want on the world, right, can only help so many people doing the one-on-one side of things. So trying to figure out how do you capture that hyper-personalization without completely just melting people's brains. What the heck is going on? This is way too much for me.
Yeah, breaking it down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you did a great job of. And how about you mentioned the MTHFR genes and methylation? I'd love for you to maybe do a run through because that is one that more people hear about. And I
Yeah.
feel like when I have people ask me about it, they're more just like it's fear based. I think I have MTHFR. What does that mean? What do I do
Yep.
with this?
Yeah. I'm totally with you. Like everyone talks about it. And, you know, you have these people like the Gary Breckas that have just blown the genetic space up like crazy. And it's the good side is people raise more awareness. The downside is that it is very fear-based exploitative marketing. I have 2 MTHFR mutations. I luckily, knock on wood, I've never been chronically sick. I've had health issues, right? As I mentioned initially. And I worked with people with the worst genetics for MTHFR you could see. They're not chronically sick. They're doing pretty well. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. Seen people with no MTHFR mutations that are chronically ill with all these other things. So is it important to understand? Yes. Is it the end all be all like everyone or a lot of people say? Definitely not. It's just one of many genes in this methylation system. So I'll give you an example. MTHFR means you can't make methylfolate. But what do you use that methylfolate for? You use it to make S-adenosylmethionine, SAMe. That's the one that's handing off that methyl group to make your neurotransmitters, to inactivate them, to inactivate your hormones, to inactivate histamine, to make glutathione. That's literally doing all the work. But there's genes like the MAT1A gene is how you make SAMe. The GNMT gene is how you break it down. So you could have MTHFR mutations. You take your methylfolate, but if you can't make the SAMe from the methylfolate, you need more SAMe. You don't need, so you see how people all eyes on MTHFR, that's all that matters. It's just, imagine if you drew a dot in a circle and then you drew a line through it. So you had the dots, you could see the line connecting them. If it's a perfect circle, which dot's the most important? They're all the same, right? And that's how I think of this cycle. It's a circle. So all these other methylation genes, MTHFR has the most data. That's why people focus on it. But that doesn't mean it's the most important. More data is coming out about these other methylation mutations. And what do you know? They cause the same exact issues at MTHFR. It's just, do you need methylfolate to fuel your methylation? Or do you need phosphatidylcholine? Or do you need SAMe? Or do you need trimethylglycine? Those are different ways you could feed the machine of methylation. And genetics let us pinpoint which ones are hardwired to not work as well. So I've seen people with MTHFR, they're on all this methylfolate, they feel like crap. We end up taking them off of methylfolate and they feel better.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think, yeah, just taking the emphasis off that one. And if you want to know all of it and get a comprehensive approach to that. And I guess maybe to take it a step back because I know what methylation is. You do. What is methylation? What is it? Because you described like the neurotransmitter piece of it and breaking down those things. But if you can explain methylation.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's perhaps one of the most important processes in our bodies. So I listed some of the things it does. It also methylates our DNA. So this is how we can turn genes up or down. So when you have all these genes, you got to make them into proteins. So an example I like to give is take vitamin D, for example. Why is seasonal depression a thing? When you're not getting sunlight, you're not making vitamin D. Vitamin D goes inside of your cells. It binds your DNA. It binds that DNA and it tells your cells those genes that make serotonin and dopamine in the brain, make more of them. Because if you don't have these proteins in your brain, you're not going to make neurotransmitters. You're going to be depressed, unmotivated, tired, all these things. So vitamin D binds the DNA and it literally says, make more of these genes. So that is, once it does that, you need to methylate the genes or unmethylate them to turn them on or off to make more of these things. Now, this is where some people, usually people without a genetics background, will say, oh, genetics don't matter because it's all about epigenetics. That's what that is, the turning on and off. You don't even know if that gene's being made. And that is true, but not true, because no matter what, every protein you make from that gene will always be mutated. So let's just say that gene that makes serotonin in the brain, it only works half as well due to the mutations. You can get a bunch of vitamin D and make more of it, but they'll only work half as well for each individual one. Is that too deep? Is that making sense? You following me?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So it's, if you only have one mutation and it works 90% as well as it should, get your sunlight, don't eat like an idiot, you're going to be good to go. But if you're someone with 3, 4, 5, 6 mutations on that gene, it's barely pumping out serotonin. These are the people, they do the right things, they're still depressed, they're on medications their whole life because their brain, no matter what, can't get enough just through doing the right lifestyle factors. Now, I'm not saying that's everybody, right? It's a proportion of people. But these are the people where that targeted supplementation can come into play. Oh, you can't turn A into B, and B makes serotonin? Let's give you more of B directly through supplementation. And that could be an overnight miraculous change for you, because now your cells are like, oh, yes, thank God, we finally have B, that nutrient we've been lacking our entire life.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and that's such a great point. Again, maybe this isn't every single person needs to be freaking out about every single step, but if something isn't going right and if they're not responding the way that they'd hope to something, then I think that's a good sign to then look deeper at some of those steps. And how about, especially with methylation MTHFR, it's brought up a lot in preconception when it comes to hormones. So I'd love to kind of bring the conversation back to that of maybe what people should look out for if they're having hormone issues or, just fertility concerns.
I'm really big on signaling pathways. And let's just take fertility, mental health, and inflammation, right? Vitamin D is beneficial for all of those, right? Methylation support is beneficial for all of those, right? So the same reason why someone may have issues getting pregnant could be the same reason why they have that anxiety, right? So that's one thing. But I think some things regarding the fertility aspect that I think go unnoticed, histamine, I think, is an overlooked factor. We know that high histamine can be linked to infertility. Now, we know in mouse studies that if female mice have high histamine, they ovulate prematurely. So they release eggs that are immature, and that can affect the fertility. Now, I know a mouse is a mouse, a human's a human, but we know high histamine causes female infertility in humans. We know how it does that same thing in mice. So you see, I don't think it's too much of a jump to say it's probably something somewhat similar happening there. The histamine also gets broken down through the methylation system. So do hormones. So if you're constantly breaking down all this excess histamine, there's only so much methylation that could happen, if that makes sense, right? So they can compete for these different things. Then, of course, we have all endocrine disruptors, all these things that are mimicking estrogen in of itself. But I do see the histamine being a factor and excess sulfur. So sulfites are this toxic metabolite of sulfur. We're all told to eat sulfur, the green vegetables, the glutathione, the N-acetylcysteine, alpha lipoic acid, and they are very healthy for us. But that sulfur needs to get turned into sulfites. Those are reactive and bad. Then we turn it into sulfate, which is how we detox in the liver. So I see that as well sometimes. These sulfite issues can contribute to, again, it's affecting that sulfation, the breakdown of some of these hormones. In your practice, do you normally see a lot of estrogen dominance? Yeah. And now, what do you normally see being a lot of the root cause drivers of that?
Great question. And it isn't for everyone. I feel like estrogen dominance is so much more of a hot topic.
It is. It is.
Oh,
it
it's
is.
that. And I'm like, actually, it's just your progesterone being low, or you're in perimenopause and you're not ovulating and making any progesterone. So there's that. I think endocrine disruptors, like you mentioned, are a huge issue for a lot of people. And also, you're talking about histamine, and I'm absolutely fascinated by the connection between histamine and estrogen and how they're,
Yep.
they promote each other. And so I do see that a lot, especially in perimenopause. Women are more estrogen dominant if they don't have as much progesterone, and suddenly they develop seasonal allergies, and they're like, "What is going on?"
I've seen that I think after giving birth too, a lot of those hormone
Mhm.
fluctuations too, I see. Yeah, because, yeah, for you guys listening, it's interesting. Estrogen stimulates mast cells to
Mhm.
release that histamine. It's very interesting. Histamine can also bind estrogen receptors and stimulate estrogen, even though the estrogen levels themselves may not be too out of whack as well, which is that back and forth ping ponging relationship there. And I mentioned those sulfites, excess sulfites release histamine. So you
Mm.
see how it's like this triangle here of these things. And I'm curious if you ever run into this. I talking with someone that wants to work with me and they mentioned estrogen dominance. I'm like, okay, is that based on blood work? And oh no, I haven't gotten blood work. I'm like, oh, what makes you think it's estrogen dominance? Oh, my symptoms. Well, if you look at the symptoms of estrogen dominance, they're virtually identical to histamine intolerance symptoms. They're one and the same. And it's so do you see that a lot where people can be mislabeling that? And again, it's the right symptoms, but we don't know if that's actually the cause.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's definitely not when when we actually are looking at their levels, it's not black and white anyway. Oh, we're gonna just know that your level is too high.
Mm-hmm.
But right, with looking deeper, you can unwind that, okay, yeah, it's actually not that at all. It is histamine, or it is that your estrogen is high, but then this is why. Because even I see hormones as signalers. I know that our cellular health is really what's at the root of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so when we're looking deeper, then we can uncover that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting with all the different hormone things too, because I think a lot of people now jump right for the hormone replacement therapy. And I'm not absolutely not against it, but we know vitamin D deficiencies can play a role in hormone dysfunction. And to me, it's people, they're doing the peptides, hormone therapy, and their vitamin D is in the gutter. And I'm like, it's not the right ordering to be doing these things. And I see
Mhm.
people DHEA or pregnenolone, these are the building blocks for our hormones. And I've worked with people where, and again, I'm not against these therapies, but they're able to come off of the hormones because they can't make DHEA or they can't make pregnenolone. And sadly, their practitioner or their coach, whatever, never ran those bloods, right? So all they were looking at was low estrogen or low testosterone. They're not
Mhm.
looking at these other factors. And with genetics, maybe you don't have a hard time making testosterone. Maybe you have a harder time making the ingredient to make testosterone, or it is that testosterone making step. And in that case, testosterone replacement therapy may make perfect sense for you. So I'm not against these tools. It's just knowing when to utilize them. And those genetics can really help us zero in on, is this the right time or situation or not?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really tempting because we are programmed to the conventional approach of you have this problem, take this thing and you're good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
That's the, the
For better or
band-aid
worse, that's
solution we're used
America.
to.
Yeah.
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 And so then we think, oh, I want to get a little bit more integrative. I want to get a little more holistic. Okay, what's the supplement that is gonna then fix my problem?
Yeah.
Or the hormone or whatever. It's like the quick fix still.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's maybe you don't
Well,
need any of it if you're
because it's not glamorous and it's
yeah.
really hard, especially for men. Women are a lot more proactive about their health, right? But it's very hard to get people to invest time or money into a problem that doesn't seem like a problem to them yet, or this invisible boogeyman, right? These diseases that we get diagnosed with, they take years, if not decades, to form.
Mhm.
So most cancers take 10, 15 years to grow before they're even detectable by any of current lab equipment. So if you get that cancer diagnosis at age 50, age 60, you could have started having that in your 40s, maybe even your 30s. A new study just came out that certain early stages of Alzheimer's can even be detected as early as 24 years old, which is really wild when you think about it. Why trying to get these nutrients in is so important today. I'm a little biased here. I think you'll agree with me, though. I think supplementation is a non-negotiable for people nowadays, just by the food quality, but also all the toxins we're exposed to. Our livers are working harder than they ever had to. And when they're working, they don't work for free. They're burning through all these micronutrients and things. So the food isn't as nutritious. We burn through micronutrients quicker. And then even throw on top, oh yeah, your cells can't absorb copper as well. Or you can't, so you add these deficiencies around us on top of your genetics, right? Not saying everyone needs this 20 supplement mega biohacker blend, right? But I think it really is non-negotiable, even if you do a lot of the right things, because it is such an uphill battle. Unless you're a hermit on your own island somewhere, like we're all exposed and inhaling these things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And especially in my patient population where I'm seeing women before, after, in between having kids too. I'm like, you've created 3 human beings out of your body and we're already depleted before that.
Yeah.
Like all these things add up and they're like, why am I so tired? I can't just keep up with my life. Like, yeah, no wonder.
Yeah, you're right. That's a whole other, you need to be supplementing or whatever it may be for 2. That's a whole other factor as well.
Yeah. We have highlighted so many amazing things. It's been so incredible so far. I'd love to maybe get some takeaway tips. I think you have dropped some amazing insights here, but maybe some like takeaways that people can act on today, this week, your top tips for people to support their well-being.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I help people with is mental health. So anxiety, depression. And one thing I like to tell people, learning to discern between external factors and internal biochemistry. I'll give you an example. External factor is you get yelled at work. So imagine if I could clone myself, Tyler 1 and Tyler 2. Tyler 1 goes and gets yelled at, right? I'm stressed. Tyler 2, before that, I have lunch and I have a salad with tomatoes and vinaigrette. Tomatoes, and these are not bad foods, people, just saying how this can affect people. I'm very sensitive to histamine. We touched on it before. It's much more than just allergies. Excess histamine excites the brain. It releases adrenaline. That's why we prescribe antihistamine medication, not just for allergies, but for anxiety. So tomatoes can make your body release histamine. Vinaigrettes contain a lot of histamine. If I had those foods, I've noticed for myself, and I know this may sound crazy, people, but this is a factor for a lot of people. I would notice I feel activated. I don't feel anxious. When I say anxiety is I have a conscious fear about the future, but I'll feel activated where I just feel a little revved up. It's not like I eat a tomato and I'm panicking. It's not like that, but I would notice I'm activated. I like using that word, right? Think it's stressed or activated. I'm not freaking out or anxious. But then if Tyler 2 has that meal, he's activated, then he gets yelled at from his boss. I'm already wound up. So my nervous system is going to be primed and I'm going to be noticeably more anxious now. I would notice this about myself. There'd be a trigger in my life and I would think, I feel like this trigger should make me like a 2 or 3 out of 10 stressed. I'm at like an 8 or 9 right now. That's when I started dissecting some of these foods and connecting it to not just my anxiety, but my brain fog, these types of things. And holy crap, I've had people get off of sleeping medications by removing their tomato sauce for dinner. And I know that I'm not saying this is the magic bullet for everyone. It's not what I'm saying here, right? It depends on the person. But things like the histamine or the sulfur, like if I have onions or garlic or broccoli for dinner, I can feel that as well. Basically, it's a long-winded way of saying listen to your body, but I know it may sound easier said than done on paper, but are you really having a bad day, or did you eat what I call an excitatory food? And notice I'm not saying a bad food. Some people can eat all the tomatoes they want and not feel anything. But I can't tell you how many times I work with people and I tell them, you're starting your morning off with eggs, which have a lot of sulfur, onions and garlic powder on them. That's a lot of sulfur. You're also taking a glutathione supplement in the morning. That's a lot of sulfur. And you're also taking NAC. I don't know why you would take both of those together. They make the same thing. 4 or 5 things in the morning. No wonder why you have a headache. you're dizzy, you're anxious because of these healthy things, right? So that's the thing I'm really vocal about trying to teach people. It's hard, the external versus internal, so you can calm yourself down and understand, okay, I'm a little wound up because of this food. Give yourself grace.
Yeah. I think it'd be so overwhelming, especially when people come to me. They're like, I don't know what food to eat. I've heard about histamines and I heard about nightshades and like all these different factors that they're then worried about. But I think the key point, like you just said, is being curious, listening to your body, and just taking note of things. And if something is maybe not making sense, then working with someone to make sense of it rather than just freaking out and feeling like you can't eat anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, that food fear can be really major and impact people. And this is why I mentioned the histamine pathway, the sulfur pathway. I release courses about these to try and, after seeing how these little changes can really change people's lives within days, whether it's sleep issues, or I had clients, they get rid of the high sulfur stuff, their tinnitus goes away, all these things from overloading the system with good things. So you can learn for yourself and learn to experiment and learn to pick up on these patterns, right? Because I can't work with everybody, right?
Yeah.
But how do you teach someone to listen to their body? You need to understand when this pathway gets too high, it's linked to XYZ. What do you know? I have X and Y and not Z. Everyone's different. So if you have these issues, you eat a lot of these things or take these supplements, you don't necessarily need to have me go through all of that with you if it's more minor related issues. So if you have seemingly random brain fog or headaches or stress or insomnia, nothing's random in health, right? There's always a cause and an effect. And not everyone, but I see a very overlooked factor, are people having so much of these healthy foods that based on their body, their sensitivities, right? They're revving themselves up.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a great point. With that, where can people find you if they do want to work with you or take one of your courses?
Yeah, so at Dr. Tyler Panzner, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, www.drtylerpanzner.com. And yeah, as I mentioned, I do one-on-one work with people. I have some courses out, a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline to try and figure out how to educate you all to be more intentional consumers of health information. It's everyone eat this, no one eat this, everyone eats the supplement's horrible. It's all tribalistic, sensationalized things to try and get attention on social media. And I'm the person that kind of help add that level of nuance so you can be more armed with knowledge about your body to make more informed choices.
Yeah. Again, I think you do a great job of that on Instagram. You do
Thank you.
break down some things that would be really hard to break down because they have so much nuance to them. But yeah, I think it's great that you definitely are helping a lot of people out there, even if it's not all one-on-one. But I think it's great that you're learning ways to do it.
Yeah, and yeah, so I'm gonna have you put some links if you don't mind, some free resources, a genetics 101 course, a self-signaling 101 course to learn pathway by pathway. Happy to give those free resources there. And I want to give a discount code if anyone does want to work with me one-on-one. So what would you want to have that be?
You want to do Dr. Naylor?
Okay.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I'll put all of those in the show notes so that people can grab those.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. I hope you guys listening got some nuggets of value here. And yeah, if you're interested in supplements, not just the flashy benefits, but potential risks. And again, what's a risk for me? Maybe a benefit for you, right? Depending on the person there. Then check out some of my work. I'm really on this mission to help bring true, thorough education about supplements with this, multi-trillion-dollar industry, right? There's not a lot of education out there about this stuff.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much for your time being here.
Thank you.